But it was the second time I was there was this man, an old man who was drawing, painting. And for me, it was just like, so it was like perfect. You know what I mean? It was perfect at the time because it was just like, he was there and you can tell I don't know how long he'd been working on, and how long he'd been working on it. It could have been his whole life, you know, how long he'd been working on this drawing. But it just really solidified the fact that this painting in and of itself is like a meditative experience, and that you can stare at him for how long, and even it's one person, like he's not going away, you know, it's like still the same person, like every time you come back, but you can just discover so much more about him every time you see him. And the fact that this man thought the same and wanted to draw him and see if he could capture, and I don't know, he just looked really lonely. I like created in my mind, I think I like wrote stuff down too. I think I created this whole like scenario for him that he was just like, his wife had died and he was all alone, you know. I just created this whole like thing about him, like while I was watching him paint, you know, draw this, one of my favorite paintings. But
incredible.
Yeah, so yeah, that was like the one experience where I was like, this is it, you know, I'm in it for life, you know. I was like, that's where I had my like holy moment, you know, with art and art history. But
so are you an artist yourself?
I'm not, actually. I hate to say it, I've been forced to create art. No, I mean, I feel creative and I feel artistic in some ways. I sing. That's like what I've always considered my like artistic,
right on,
you know, being, I guess. I sing, like I'm technically classically trained, but it's been a long time. But my favorites like 1920s, 30s, kind of like jazz blues, mostly like Cole Porter, like George Gershwin, and those kinds of beautiful songs. But I've had to take art classes just because of art history. You have to kind of know different mediums and different styles and different, you know what I mean? So they kind of force you into it. Getting back to the whole Dada thing, the only thing I've actually really felt strongly about was collage, which is really interesting. And it's funny because now that I think about it, I know Dadists create like collage, but it's funny because people say that like Picasso and like Rock invented the collage, but that obviously could have been like 1920s. But it's just funny that like I felt really interested, and really the only thing I ever felt really kind of together about it was creating this. For one of my classes, I had to create a collage like based on like our life or whatever, and people got like, you know, took all this stuff out of magazines and it was horrible, and you know what I mean, it was just really kitschy and I didn't like it. And I created this thing that was really like raw and visceral, you know, and it wasn't a representation of really anything, but it like felt right, you know. And I think that was something that I was like, this is it, you know. And it kind of gets back to the whole Dadaist, like it's kind of a little bit of absurd, and I feel like that's the way internally we are. We're not like clear cut, you know, oh, like it's beautiful sky and trees and this and that. And I'm like, no, if you're really doing a representation of like who you are inside, it has to be somewhat obscure and abstract, I think.
Some dark shit.
Yeah.
This is some good shit.
Yeah, but I feel like abstract, like I've always been more drawn, whenever I create, I've always been more drawn to like abstract art, because that just makes more sense to me, you know, understanding patterns and things. And we did some like a Pollock like splatter paint like exercise with like ink, and it was really, I kind of liked it a lot because I realized this ink that we were using could stain like everything I owned and like loved, you know, like really bad. But it's fun because you're just splattering it, like it's just, you know, I mean, it was a lot of fun. So that's, whenever I have had to create art, that's so horrible to say, but like whenever I've like been asked to create art, and so, you know, for me, I thought about getting back into something like that, but I don't know, I just,
for the longest time, I definitely did not consider myself an artist. I was very left brain, mathematical, analytical, but I always had the interest in photography because it was my way of appreciating art and being able to show my eye and my appreciation, show that off.
Yeah.
So other people could then appreciate it.
Right.
And I don't know what made the switch.
Yeah,
at some point I was like, I'm no longer an appreciator, but I do consider myself an artist.
Right. And I think about it too. It's interesting, if I were to get into creating art, how like I would be so analytical, because that's just the way my eye is trained. Like my eye is trained now. I mean, and it's really great because I use this in other things. This is like the way my art history training was. Is you're really meant to see the all-encompassing thing you're looking at, the painting or whatever, and you're meant to see patterns and shapes and how the colors relate to the different things that you're seeing, and it's interesting because I'm able to use that in like my real life. I worked for like an advertising firm, kind of doing, but it's nice because I can actually see how patterns, and it kind of gets into like my master's degree, but you're able to see patterns not only in like a painting, but in like a society or in like a life. You know what I mean? You're able to see them more abstractly even. And I thought about like if I ever created art, like I would be so like overly like analytical of like the things that I'm actually creating if I really tried to. But
it's so interesting that portraiture was your passion.
Yeah.
Because I've been like, I'm not a painter, not a drawer, but I do want to get into portraiture and get my like non-artistic, sloppy, shitty style.
Yeah.
And do, I don't know, create my own sort of style.
Right.
Doing that way. But that's kind of been in the back of my mind recently.
Right. Interesting. Portraiture is so fascinating, and then for such a long time it was really considered something very practical, because portraiture was the only way you're, well, good or bad, whether or not it was a realistic representation or, beyond that, a representation of a person, but it really was the only way, it was the only way that you were able to see what like people look like and what styles looked like, and then, but then when you
development of photography.
Yeah, exactly. But then it kind of became something like more than that. Speaking of portraiture, something that has been kind of in the news, not lately, but it's been a part of the whole like Nazi looting of art. The portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer by Gustav Klimt. He was an Austrian artist. Oh my God, this is horrible. I can't remember now. But he, thank you. Painted this portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer, and of course it was in like the 20s when photography was a thing, but it was considered a luxury to have like a portrait painted of you. And of course he created such a beautiful style of it, and it was looted by the Nazis, so that's a whole other thing. But it was really interesting. Now it's in the one of the national galleries in Europe, and they won't give it back to like Spain. That's a whole other thing. But that could be like a whole nother like 3-hour long interview. But it's so interesting to think that like then when portraiture became a luxury of some sort, to have your portrait painted. And now it's interesting to think about like what does portraiture mean next today? To sit for something for that long, like I don't think American. I don't think like modern bodies could even like sit.
Right. I think that I'd have to like take a photo of some like a situation, almost candid.
Yeah.
And
then it becomes meditative for then the artist, and not necessarily like the sitter as well. But it's so interesting that it's like kind of a reversal of like medium in a way. It's like we're getting back to more, I don't want to say like traditional styles and mediums, but it's so interesting to think. I would love to see portraiture like kind of come back up, because it's so fascinating, and it really is. It's to imagine like all the soul and all the heart that you can capture in like a moment, but a moment that took like however many hours long to paint. It's pretty amazing. But
my sister's a huge fan of Jeff Goldblum, and she has as her cover photo, I'm pretty sure he's naked or wearing a loincloth, but he's like reaching out and touching a butterfly, and it was just really artsy but like silly. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder, did they get Jeff Goldblum to pose, or like was it a picture, or completely just made up?
And then also to kind of like go off of that, like Andy Warhol and his Polaroids. I mean, he created. I worked at his gallery in right after my undergrad, and he donated, or not he, but the foundation, the Andy Warhol Foundation, donated a bunch of his Polaroids. So they had this whole to this gallery. They had a whole exhibition, and it was fun to kind of like go into the back closet and kind of see like, oh crap, like these are the Polaroids that Andy Warhol took. And so he created of the like crazy like scene of his factory scene. He would just take all these random Polaroids, and some of them were like parties and dinners and all the famous people that were around him at the time. Some of them were during his like you know, he would have these like porn shoots. So some of them were during his porn shoots and during his movies that he would make. And it's so interesting to capture. I really enjoy artists that also just don't even care about, oh, this is my one thing, this is the only thing that I do. But like he had his paintings and silk screens and all these things that he did, and you know, and then he did video, and then he did, I think it was really encapsulating of the time, like you know, to see them, you know, the Polaroids give you a whole other angle of like, you know, either the movie or, you know, the silk screen that he was doing, or you know, the factory scene was so fascinating for me. But
I'm a huge fan of Polaroid.
Yeah.
My parents had a camera when I was a little kid, and I don't think I ever took photos on it. But recently got a couple Polaroids, gave one to a buddy, and kept one for myself.
Right.
But the film is so expensive now.
So expensive.
It's like
a shame.
$24 for 8 photos.
Yeah, right?
So.
And then that's horrible, because then it limits you to, like, you know what I mean? Even if you do like spend the money to buy, you know, you're like, oh wait, but I can't capture this moment. I'm sorry. I only have like one shot left.
Right. I find myself getting picky, like.
Yeah. And then that's not really what it's supposed to be about.
But
you know?
like ideally, I'll have like 4 packs of Polaroid film, so I'm just like, I don't care. Like some of these won't come out.
Right,
some of these are gonna be awesome. So I try not to let the money
for sure
phase me.
Yeah.
Like just block it out. Like
Right?
just don't fuck it.
Don't
Whatever.
think about it, right?
It's not the purpose.
That's too funny. So I did 2.5 years of study in Rome, and then unfortunately I had to move home. My dad got really sick, and so I came home and I did community college for like 2.5 years. So my kind of art history mind kind of like, I don't want to say I shut it off, but and then unfortunately my dad passed away, and so I was like, all right, what's next? Like, what do I do next? And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna finish my art history degree. I could have picked something practical. I had all the options.